Hi, I am Jamie Norpel, and welcome to another Safer Together chat. Today I have two very special guests. I have Brittany Schutz with the York Opioid Collaborative and Pam Gay with the York County Coroner's Office, and they're here to talk to us today about the drug use State of the Union that's happening in York County, kind of things that are happening that I want people to be aware of. So let me start off with Brittany. Could you tell us a little bit about the York Opioid Collaborative, like a 30-second elevator pitch of what do you do?
Yeah, so our primary focus is to bring cross-sector partners together to look at the solutions to substance use in our community. Our vision is to reduce the adverse impact of substances and create a community supportive of recovery.
Wow, okay, you had that down. Yes, you've done that before. So what's neat about your position is that you have this 30,000-foot view because you are connected to substance abuse providers, you're talking to recovery specialists, people that are on the street, so you're connected with the entire York County. And Pam, as a coroner, you're also connected to the entire York County. Anytime someone dies, right, they call your office.
Right. So we investigate and certify sudden traumatic deaths, unexpected deaths, basically. Some natural deaths, but the bulk of what we investigate is sudden traumatic, and that would include drug overdose deaths.
Yep. So why don't we double click on that? Tell us what is kind of happening in York County right now. Do drug deaths seem to be up or down?
So the good news is we are bucking the national trend and actually a little higher in our decrease over last year. We're about 32% decrease over last year with our deaths from drugs.
So that's a third less than last year.
Yeah. And the national trend I think is somewhere around 27% right now for last year. So definitely we actually see it and feel it in our office, which is great. We're thankful for that. However, obviously we still have a significant problem here in York County, and we still had to date 99 deaths related to drugs and alcohol. Basically.
So from January to when we're filming, December, which is May 29th, we've had 99 people die from drug overdoses and alcohol-related deaths.
That's correct.
Wow.
So it's still a big problem. When I first started in 2014, our drug deaths had increased to the 60s, and the bulk of them were heroin back then. Which was a big increase from the year before when we only had 17 heroin or something the year before. So we noticed then that we were starting to have this opioid problem that probably had been persisting for years before as oral drugs, prescription drugs. But then obviously it continued to grow. But this is the lowest we've been since 2015 with our drug deaths, so we're very thankful for that. And hopefully we continue to see a trend down. So.
Yeah, and nationally we're also seeing a reduction, but it's a reduction in overdose deaths compared to 2020, 2021 when we saw a significant spike. Our numbers nationally are about where they were 2019. So we still have not fallen to where they were back in 2013, 2012. So
that's the lowest?
I mean, that was when you started to see the uptick, but so when you look at national trends and you see that we're going down, we still are not as low as we were a decade ago. Okay. So there's still a lot of work to be done. It's great to see that the numbers are going down. They're going in the right direction. But when we talk about a reduction in overdose deaths, at least on the national level and even locally, and I think Pam can attest to this, we still have a lot of work that we need to do to get those numbers as low as possible, knowing it might be impossible to get to zero, although that's what we aim for, right? We want zero. But we still have, a significant amount of individuals who are struggling with substance use and unfortunately at risk for overdose, and we obviously have a lot of fatal overdoses still.
What kind of, so when I was growing up, it was heroin, right, in the 1990s. I feel like you heard a lot of heroin in the early 2000s. Today, what kind of drugs are people using?
Well, in the cases where we are involved, the deaths, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're all using, because some of them are using things that they survive with, but the deaths involve fentanyl, a little heroin still, not a whole lot, Matter of fact, I don't think we have any so far for this year. It is still fentanyl most of the time, and xylazine. Xylazine is always with the fentanyl in York County so far. We have not seen xylazine by itself. But we did have 17 xylazine-related deaths last year. So.
And that's a tranquilizer, right?
Yeah, it's an animal tranquilizer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a sedative it's an adulterant that's being added to the drug supply, xylazine. Now we're seeing a replacement of medetomidine, which is another sedative animal tranquilizer. What is believed is happening when there was restrictions placed on xylazine, now we see them shifting to another. But like Pam said, it's often found with another substance, which is why it's considered an adulterant, not often sought out as to be used by itself.
How do people get a hold of like xylazine and say that again,
medetomidine?
Medetomidine. Do you have to practice that?
I did say that right?
Better than me.
Are they prescription? Are they synthetic that people are making?
They get that from their dealer. So I don't know the dealer.
So
you
it's like
probably
synthetic.
have to talk to the DA's office to figure out how that's happening.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the drug manufacturers or drug producers are adding it intentionally to the drug supply. And you add adulterants for many different reasons. One, sometimes it's a way to bulk up your supply and you're able to produce more and get more money with lower products sometimes when you add adulterants. Also, when you add adulterants, it just changes the impact of the substance. So when you're trying to, unfortunately keep people coming back to you, you add things that might make them more inclined to come back and get more. So that's adulterants are added to drugs.
Okay. And Pam, what's interesting is that you're a coroner, but yet you're on this care team, right? And you're on Brittany's board, right?
Well, I was on
Founder.
Brittany's board. I'm not anymore. But I was. Yeah, we DA Sunday, former DA Sunday, and a group of us started the Opioid Collaborative, but when it was the Heroin Task Force initially. Part of the coroner's goal is prevention, and actually that's something that's really stressed even for our national accreditation, is to constantly be out in the community and doing prevention work and education. So to me, I'm a nurse, that's my background, and definitely it made sense to me that as all these people were dying, we had to figure out ways to get the word out to the community about how dangerous this was, and we needed to try and figure out ways to slow it down if possible, and that's really how it all came about with the Opioid Collaborative.
Well, let's talk about then. So I don't know if I ever really disclosed to you guys, but my family has struggled with alcohol and substance abuse. It's my mom's side, and I got to see my cousin be raised in an absentee household because her dad wasn't in the picture and the mom was a user. Is that the correct terminology, by the way? What should I say?
So we try to use person-first language, so an individual who uses substances or an individual with a substance use disorder, knowing there's a continuum, right? People can use substances and never develop to the point of a disorder, but if it's causing dysfunction in their life, oftentimes then we refer to it as substance use disorder.
Okay. Thank you. It's very helpful. Appreciate that.
No problem.
But I remember because of that, my mom really stressing that it is in your genes. Like, you have to be careful, make sure that you don't become addicted to alcohol or drugs. And when I was in school, we had DARE, right? And I know that there's some contention on if that's actually useful or not. But why would someone use drugs? Can you talk to us about mental health and how people are struggling and how they might turn to these as an escape?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is that drugs take away pain at a rate, at a level that others don't, right? Like, we often talk about dopamine receptors and how we release dopamine every day when we do things that our body is saying do that again, right? When we eat, when we drink, when we have sex, all these different things. Drugs do that so much higher. They produce so much more dopamine. So your body tells you do that again. It took away any of that emotional, physical pain you might be experiencing. And people turn to substances for many different reasons, right? It could start out as experimental for some. Some it is to cope with other issues, whether that be physical or emotional pain. Trauma. Again, substances are just, they have a way of taking away that pain. What we know is that temporarily it takes away that pain, right? Unfortunately, that pain will return, but they do a really good job of doing that.
But I do believe, too, that like your family's experience, that sometimes it is a little bit of a genetic predisposition towards it. And yes, you do have to be more careful in some families because, in my family, for example, we have individuals who can, take substances and not get addicted. And then we have family members who got hooked the first time, with whatever. And we've experienced it in our own family. So definitely it's something that, families sometimes have a tendency to have multiple family members involved in the activity, unfortunately, and the predisposition to get addicted or to get to the point where they are very dependent on those substances. So.
Yeah, and we often talk about addiction as a family disease, really showing that it impacts the whole family unit, and I think it also carries over into the environment, the genetics that potentially could be at play for families at risk of substance use or have family members that have a substance use disorder. There's been a lot of research out there around, is there a genetic component to some of this?
Well, and Brittany, you're into the data. Every meeting we have, you're like, well, let's pull out the actual numbers, and I see you have notes there. Is there any maybe fact or data point that you want our listeners to hear today?
I mean, I think Pam shared, obviously, the overdose numbers. Fatal overdoses is one of those stats that really stick out to you. It really shows you the unfortunate mortality associated with this, right? But we have other stats that also show us just the impact of substance use. And so I did pull out some statistics specifically to Pennsylvania. And according to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, which is a survey that's administered, about 20% of Pennsylvanians age 12 or older classified as needing substance use treatment in the past year. So, and of that 20%, only 71% of them never receive treatment. So I think the take home is that we have individuals in our community who struggle with substance use, and for many reasons they might not ever get treatment. And there's multiple barriers, whether that be stigma, whether that be your family dynamics, things that are happening at home, insurance, whatever it might be. But 71% of Pennsylvanians that required treatment in 2022 and 2023 never received treatment. And I think that's a staggering statistic. It should not be that high. So I think that's where our work is still needs to be.
I also think one of the things that we are seeing lately is, and Brittany can clarify for me, I'm sure, is that the average age is increasing.
Really?
So we are seeing older and older individuals who have, unfortunately, a substance use disorder of some sort, whether it be opioid or it could quite often be alcohol too, or a combination of mixed drugs with alcohol and opioids. So definitely, I know a lot of people worry and think that the young kids are doing this, and while that is always a concern of ours, we really don't see it as much in the younger population as we have over the last few years. We're seeing this increasing age, and we've even had individuals die in their 80s with opioid and cocaine addiction.
Wow.
Or use disorder of some sort, whether it be alcohol or those illicit substances.
Right.
So.
Well, it's one thing. So you allowed me to do a ride along a few months ago, and just to appreciate and understand what you do, right? I think we were at a meeting, and I said, Pam, I realized I don't really understand what goes into responding to someone who died. And in there, in the ride along, we went to a location in New York City where someone had overdosed and they had died. And I remember thinking, fighting the stigma of, why do people keep doing this to themselves? Because people feel the need to they're narcotining all the time, the same people over and over again, and why can't we just get clean? And why do people even turn to drugs? And I had to think, all right, well, this person didn't grow up thinking, you know what, I can't wait to be a drug user. Like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. So what kind of stigmas or stereotypes should we be breaking?
Well, I think one of the things that we kept trying to show initially when we would go out and do the town halls years ago at the start of all this was we wanted people to understand that this isn't just a city issue. This is a county issue, and we are seeing people in all reaches of the county who are finding themselves succumbing to this or falling prey to this or getting involved somehow, some way. And really how a lot of it starts for some is just when they go on prescription pain pills for various surgeries or treatments that they're undergoing, and they've had trouble getting off of those pain pills, and of course it's harder to get those pills now. And so sometimes initially how it started was we were seeing people that were on pain pills that were going out buying their drugs on the street to get them heroin instead of oxy, because they were trying to replace that relief of pain with those drugs. So I think that's a stereotype that a lot of people had initially when we started this education and awareness effort, because they thought that they were just junkies living on the street, jobless. And really a lot of individuals who have opioid use disorder come from middle-class families or have had some trauma in their life or whatever that kind of put them on the wrong path, but yet they can hide it for a while from others, and people might be shocked to find out who in a room of 100 people might be struggling with opioid use disorder.
Yeah, when we often do presentations and talk, we say, addiction does not discriminate. It can impact all walks of life. Obviously, there are risk factors that make you predisposed to potentially struggle with substance use, whether, again, that's mental health, trauma, your family, your environment. So we do obviously see some that are more at risk. I think the other challenge we've always been up against when it comes to the stigma of substance use is how we've historically handled substance use in our country, which we did not treat it like a disease. We unfortunately did criminalize substance use decades ago, and we did not see it did not understand the science behind it. We didn't really look at the fact that there's many factors that contribute and how we can help people get treatment and care. And I often talk about the fact that substance use dates back really to the foundation of our country. You can go back decades and decades and see the various different waves of different drugs that have been introduced. I mean, cocaine, heroin, they've all were introduced at one point for medicinal and accepted reasons, right? So it's been around for a while, which unfortunately we didn't talk about as a community. The thing I'm thankful for is that we're talking about it more. We're talking about it, we're putting it out there, which is only hopefully going to help people who are still struggling know that there is treatment out there, there is support, and there's people who care.
Closing thoughts. One other or last thing that you might want people to remember when they click out of this podcast.
Well, I think Brittany and I are both on the same wavelength when it comes to making sure people know that there's hope, there's help. People do recover from this. And one other thing especially that I want to stress is that for the families, there's lots of support out there now that did not exist back in 2013, 2014, but now York has really done a lot with putting some funding that they received back into the community to try and help with prevention as well as reaching out to the families. And we just want the families to know, especially that we're here for them and we'll help them through this. And definitely there's help for those in recovery and that want to make the change.
And check out the links in the bottom. We'll put resources down there too.
Yeah, I think I'll just capitalize on that. We often, again, talk about all the statistics, but at the end of the day, we know that there's so many people in our community that are in recovery and thriving, and recovery is absolutely possible with the right supports. And like Pam said, we here in York County, there's been a lot of work to build up those supports, a lot of work to build up those access to treatment and other services that individuals need. So if you are struggling or you have a family member struggling, there is help and there is hope. Like Pam said, there's people out here in York County that will go the extra mile to help people, to get them the services they need. And I think that's kind of the cool thing about York County. I mean, we're a big county but a small county at the same time, and there's a lot that will lend the helping hand and help people get the treatment they need.
I had one more thing I wanted to stress too, is medication-assisted treatment is out there for people, and once frowned upon by many people in this community. I think we've done a full 360-degree turn on that, and it's great, or 180-degree, I guess I should say. It's great to see that because for some people, it helps them get their life back, helps them get their kids back, helps them get back on track, and even me, with my background in nursing, I had to put away that stigma that I had for a long time where I felt like people were replacing one thing with another, and understand that for some people this is the only way that they can get some sort of normalcy back in their life. Just very similar to when people have other medical conditions and they need medication to help them. And we have done a great job, I think, although there's still work to do, with decreasing that stigma of those that are on medication-assisted treatment. Abstinence can work for some people, but definitely medication-assisted treatment has been a lifesaver for those with opioid use disorder, because we actually saw a lot more people dying from trying to be abstinent than from medication-assisted treatment.
So instead of just the old trend of quitting cold turkey, you are expected to go down this single path. This is the only way to recovery. Now it sounds like there's a lot more chemical supports for the body, so it's not just that abrupt ending. There's a gradual transition.
Yes.
Gradual transition, and some people might have to be on some of those medications for the rest of their life. And we have to understand that it doesn't make them any less of a person, any more than anybody else that has to have medications for other diseases.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for opioid use disorder, MAT we've seen a significant expansion in that medication-assisted treatment, which is kind of like the gold standard for opioid use disorder in terms of like the research shows the effectiveness of it and the ability it has to help individuals get stable, get their lives back. But we, just like MAT, we're really trying to promote all pathways to recovery and, again, making sure we have accessibility to them in York.
Awesome. Yay. Makes me proud of my county that this exists, that we have something like this, that we have a coroner that cares so much. And Brittany, thank you for leading this initiative. I know it's really awesome. So thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.